need help or you want me to go with you or you good?
No, actually, I forgot something in there.
I know, I just need to run to the storage. I forgot something. Oh, the Unibit. Yeah. I'm gonna close my doors to get on there. Is it time to start to jump on the meeting?
Hey.
Oh, we still got like, what, 5 minutes? But I'm just on that piece and it's. I don't think. Okay. I'll shut the door.
Okay. Rick, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Do we have a count? How close are we to quorum?
You've got quorum. You're already over it.
Okay. Okay, if we have quorum, we'll go ahead and come to order at 3:03. Colleagues, welcome back for the new year. Glad that we all are able to come back and start teaching and the like. It asked for approval of the agenda. All those in, can we post the survey for that, please? Actually, my mistake. Are there any changes? Okay. Nancy, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So we'll come to order at 3:06. Unless you.
Recording in progress.
I cannot see our colleagues. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Can we try audio again? Rick, are you good?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So we have quorum. We'll go ahead and come to order at 3:06. The first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes? If there are no changes, the agenda is approved. Colleagues, the next item on our agenda is approval of the November 23rd meetings or minutes. Are there any changes? Hearing no changes, the minutes are also approved. The next item on our agenda is the president's report. President Stokes is unable to join us today. And so she is at a meeting at the Roundhouse and isn't able to be with us. So we will go to the next item on our agenda, which is the provost report. Do we have Provost Holloway?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Provost Holloway, could you go ahead and share your report with us, please?
Yeah, Rick, can I share screen, please?
Yes.
I cannot start while other participant is sharing. All righty. Okay. Okay, so hopefully folks can see this. It says Faculty Senate report. So first, thanks as always for taking the time to hear from me. And President Stokes does send her apologies. She's at the House Appropriations Committee meeting this afternoon, and I'll have a little bit to say about that later in my report as well. So let me dive in. So first, I'd like to start with good news. And so good news that was publicly announced today, College of Nursing's Master of Science in Nursing online program was ranked 20th in the nation. That's a huge increase. They were ranked 83rd in the last ranking. So we're really excited about that. Second in the Mountain West and obviously first in the state. So very, very pleased and excited about that. You know, it's of course a testament to the faculty and students in the College of Nursing that they've achieved this particular recognition. And it's also really important because this is such an important discipline for the state of New Mexico. So excited to share that positive news. Next, I wanted to say a little bit about academic leadership searches that are ongoing. Many of these you already know about, but just a quick recap. So Vice President for Student Affairs, that's moving along pretty good clip now with Barbara Rodriguez as the Search Advisory Chair. Chancellor for UNM Valencia, Chancellor Cindy Rooney is chairing that search. UNM Los Alamos, Cindy Rooney will be stepping down as Chancellor of UNM Los Alamos this summer. She's not retiring, she's just ready to move on to other things. So she'll be missed in that role, but we've launched a search for a new Chancellor for UNM Los Alamos with Mary Gutierrez as the chair. Mary, some of you may not know, she's the current Chancellor at the UNM Taos. And then finally, you know, I think we've talked about this last fall, but the Dean of Engineering's term ends at next December. And so we're starting to put together a search advisory committee for that search. Vice President for Research, Ellen Fisher, has agreed to chair. The rest of the committee is currently open. And so if folks here in Faculty Senate have ideas for members of the Search Advisory Committee for the Dean of Engineering, just feel free to shoot me a note. Happy to hear those recommendations over the next week or so as we start to try and pull that committee together. So lots going on there in terms of finding new leadership across UNM. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about graduate assistant unionization. That I think some or most of you are aware that there's activity going on there. So I just wanted to give kind of a timeline of some of the the key points in that effort. And so in December of 2020, a petition was filed with the New Mexico Public Employees Labor Relations Board, the PELRB, seeking to represent, and where things are in quote, they are quotes. So seeking to represent all full-time and part-time graduate employees whose primary job is instruction and or research. In March, the Labor Board Executive Director assessed that based on folks who were in assistantship roles back in December, that 53 had expressed interest in being so represented. And so they had a majority. There's some technical name for it. I don't remember what it is. But anyway, there was a majority of 53% showing an expression of interest according to the March 21 count. In June of 21, the executive director looked at conclusions of law and wrote a ruling that graduate assistants are not regular employees and not able to bargain collectively. The key here is the term regular, by the way. It's not a question of whether they're employees, but regular was a technical term in the law. That opinion that the executive director issued in June also misstated the petition. That opinion that he wrote says that the petition was to collectively represent all full-time and part-time graduate students engaged in instruction and research. And I want to kind of pause there because this is one of the complexities we're having in this particular effort. So we started with a petition asking that graduate employees whose primary job is instruction and research be represented. And then we have an opinion saying that all students can be represented by in collective bargaining by a union. That was somewhat confusing at the time because of course many graduate students engage in research, for example, but are not employees. In August, the Labor Relations Board itself discarded the executive director's conclusion and ruled that the Public Employees Bargaining Act does not exclude graduate student from its definition of regular employees. And that, this was their final conclusion, graduate students fall within the PEBA's definition of public employees. This is also very confusing to us because it seems to say that students are employees by the reasoning that the Labor Relations Board has used. A high school student is a public employee. And so at this point, there's a certain confusion about who we're talking about in the materials that are the opinions that are being written. In January, there are some other things that happened in between. I'm skipping them as details. But in January, the Labor Relations Board issued an oral statement that a union is to be certified, but so far they have not in fact issued a final ruling. So at the moment, it's unclear who's supposed to be represented. Since the petition asked for one thing, the executive director wrote something else, and the Labor Relations Board said that students are employees, not graduate assistants, but students. And so we're waiting for the written ruling from the Labor Board, and the university has filed an appeal in district court to clarify the confusion that's been created by the Labor Board rulings. So really, the key step for us at this point is seeing a written ruling from the Labor Board, which either will or will not clarify who exactly it is that the Labor Board believes should be represented in collective bargaining. I will, just as a comment, say that we have offered the opinion both to those seeking to unionize and the Labor Board that if they would simply hold an election, it would be much more clear. But it's not clear that the folks engaged in the effort want to do that. So in any event, our current status is that we're waiting for the written final ruling from the Labor Board that we hope will clarify what exactly is involved in this particular unionization effort. So I just wanted to share kind of that basic timeline and those points with this group. So you know kind of where we are and what's going on from our perspective. Okay, next, moving on to some other things. So mentioned that President Stokes is at the House Appropriations Committee this afternoon. We are in the midst of the legislative session. It's a 30-day session, so it's largely, but not entirely, focused on the state budget. A few highlights that I really wanted to bring out going into the session. The Legislative Finance Committee, LFC, has made recommendations around budgets. The Division of Finance and Administration, the DFA, has made recommendations around budgets. Ultimately, of course, it's the legislature who passes a budget. Their primary committee involved in this is the LFC. It's the governor's prerogative to line item veto things or not, but it's the DFA as part of the executive that then administers that budget. So it is helpful to see where each of them sits. So the Legislative Finance Committee generally recommended higher increases in ING funding for fiscal year 23 for the Albuquerque Academic Affairs units, what folks generally call main campus. It's a 3% increase they recommend. For the branch campuses, you see the numbers there, generally around 2% increases. Flat ING funding for HSC. DFA recommended smaller numbers in most categories, 2% for main campus, various fractions for Gallup, and then indeed a decrease for Taos. I should comment on HSC. The ING funding for HSC, about $60 million, is only a fraction of the total funding that HSC receives from the state. There are a number of other mechanisms by which funds flow into HSC. There are recommended increases in HSC programs of various kinds. They're just not reflected in this ING funding table. Equally important are the recommendations over compensation, which are in the big yellow box down here. Legislative Finance Committee has taken a really interesting tack. They recommend a 3% increase this year, starting in the fourth quarter, and a 4% increase for fiscal year 23, starting in July. DFA, on the other hand, recommends simply 4% starting in July. So LFC is making a higher recommendation, a little over 7%. So again, our perspective is we really want to start with the LFC recommendations because overall they're more favorable towards higher education. One comment I'll make on compensation, there's some back movement here. The legislature never fully funds our compensation increases. They only partially fund them. Last year, after much discussion, the higher education institutions had gotten them to move to funding about 80% of compensation increases. This year, the proposals are that they will fund only about 70% of compensation increases. What that means, of course, is we have to find the rest. Just so folks know what goes on as we think about these numbers. Nevertheless, the LFC recommendation is a good one for us. We've done a salary study for UNM faculty. What would be needed to bring our faculty salaries up to say the median of an appropriate peer group. It's about a 15% total increase to reach that. We'll never reach that in a single year, but we need to compound it over a few years. A 7% increase would be a good step in that direction. Some other big things in the legislative session. One is there's additional funding for the lottery scholarship, 191 million. But just as importantly to us is that there are modifications being proposed for the lottery scholarship rules. Most of our students aren't eligible for the lottery scholarship, they lose it. Most of our students lose the lottery scholarship because they can't maintain 15 credit hours per term. And so the majority of our students who lose it, which is the majority of our students, lose it because they can't successfully complete 15 credits in a term. The modifications start to provide some flexibility around that. So we think that These proposed modifications and perhaps some others will lead to more students retaining their lottery scholarship. And this is a conversation we started with the state over the summer, and it's good to see it having some traction. Just to mention a couple, there's a lot of capital projects in front of the legislature. Our two biggest ones are the Child Psychiatric Center, CPC, and the Center for Collaborative Arts Technology. These are CPC is in the 30 millions, CCAT is in the 45 million. These have moved forward into the process, and it's early days yet, but at least at the moment, our major capital projects are receiving traction. Similar number of capital projects at the branches. Some of those have been moved forward. Some are a little less clear at this point, but at this point in the process, we're not in a bad place with respect to capital project requests. So that's where we are, and you know, we've got about the next 3 weeks or so to try and make our points and make our arguments up in Santa Fe to make sure that higher education has what it needs out of the state budget process. Based on that, then I also wanted to talk a little bit about some budgeting activity that's going on here in Albuquerque. This particular section is a little bit focused on the academic units on main campus, on the academic affairs unit. So forgive me that narrowing for a few minutes. But the budget leadership team has started their reviews of requests around core funds. Core funds are basically ING from the state, tuition dollars, F&A return, and student fees. The core funds support, among other things, the 11 schools and colleges that report to academic affairs. They're listed there. Number of other academic delivery units, as well as a whole set of enabling units like enrollment management, advising, CTL, ombuds, CARS, so on. And so I wanted to say just a little bit about the presentation I gave to the budget leadership team, looking for support for these units. And this is a shortened version of that. The way this process works for us is back in September, we asked all of the units to provide us with their academic plans for the next 3 years. Tell us where you're headed, what you're trying to do. Because of those plans, what are the resource needs that you foresee? And so plans which turn into resource requests. We received almost 240 requests for recurring one-time and capital funding from the academic affairs units. Those totaled about 22 million in recurring requests and 17 million in one-time requests. Just for fiscal 23, the needs identified were 25 million, with recurring needs of about 15 million and smaller amounts for one-time and capital requests. And the point is, with the plans people are trying to make for the academic units, there are significant needs. And they're, you know, you look through these 240 requests, it's not that like there's a lot of bad ideas there. There are a lot of good ideas there. They just represent significant financial needs. To prioritize those, the way we think about it is to support research and learning and address Regent priorities. And so Regent priorities are actually here in the yellow box. The first one is achieve competitive faculty salaries, recruit and retain excellent faculty, support an advanced workforce and economic growth in New Mexico, ensure that we have strong enrollment and our students are successful, and address strategic goals like UNM 2040, strategic research areas, teacher education, nursing, and so on. And so we look at these requests through those lenses, as well as looking for broad benefit across the institution, collaboration across units, creating investments in human and physical infrastructure, if you will, that will support continued success. So those are the kind of lenses that we look through as we prioritize these requests. The requests that we did put forward then to the budget leadership team, and again, this is basically the academic affairs units in Albuquerque, a little over $1 million for faculty promotion, equity and retention, a little over $1 million for arts and sciences, partial replacement of faculty in arts and sciences. And the key driver there is that arts and sciences does have a structural budget deficit. What we're trying to do is basically for every dollar of budget reduction that arts and sciences can make, put in a dollar invested in people. Arts and sciences generally has about 30 faculty separations a year. They have a lot of faculty, so that's retirements and resignations. And so what we're planning to do is out of that 30, have a net reduction of about 10 folks per year, which means we're replacing 20 folks per year. And so we have to find the budget to do that, given that there's a structural deficit. And so that's the purpose of that, to make sure that arts and sciences, while it shrinks some, doesn't shrink too much. $1 million for enrollment and student success, a little over $2 million for research, education, and service activities, and then $3 million in startup. And so that includes both startup for a new dean of engineering, a new vice president for student affairs, but also creating a startup fund for faculty recruiting. We've never had a systematic pool of funds that we could draw on for startup. And so the proposal here is to take ING funds and use them for startup. That's a total of a little over $8 million in all those requests. And not in those requests is the 7% compensation increase that we also support. So just a little context then, as we think about, sort of $8.6 million in new funding. And by the way, this is not a done deal. We have to see, what does the state do in funding? What does tuition look like? What does enrollment look like? It's unlikely we will have 8.6 million in new funding to allocate, but if we do, then this is the thinking on it. Just for a little context, and I've shown this at some presentations, but not at a faculty senate meeting. Over the last 5 years, student credit hours are down at this in Albuquerque, and that's Albuquerque, HSC, and the rest of campus by about 20%. Central campus is about 22% over that time. I have to note, because the regents have noted it to me, the number of faculty has actually increased by over 100 at that same time. So there is a bit of a concern around a mismatch there. It's also the case that this is not a uniform decrease across everything. So arts and sciences is down 28%, but nursing is up by about the same percentage. Now, nursing is much smaller, so that doesn't account for a balance in student credit hours, but they're about the same percentage. Fine arts, on the other hand, is down, but not by those same kinds of large numbers. Every unit you look at has a different story. But it is something we have to keep some attention on, of sort of what's the teaching effort going on at the institution right now. It does point to the need to really continue to work on enrollment. And so I want to talk about enrollment. This is spring enrollment, and the number I'll draw your attention to first on the left-hand side, down 2.56% for spring. That's actually a good number. We were down 2.4% in fall. So being down by about the same amount in spring is actually an expected outcome. If we had looked at this last spring 2021, we would see that the decrease for spring was over twice what we lost in fall. And that was students stepping out because of the large number of online classes that they were choosing not to take. And so we lost a lot of students because of that. You see that as well in this table on the left, where it says down 30% in readmits. Those are students who stepped out last year and have decided not to come back. And usually we're able to get some of those students back. Those students are choosing not to come back. They did not find their first couple of years of college very rewarding because of the structure we were forced to teach in. And so it's pretty hard to get those students back. But I remind you, last fall and the previous fall, we saw increases in first-year students of over 7%. We saw increases in new graduate students of around 20%. If we maintain those kinds of changes for next fall, we will see growth in overall enrollment in Albuquerque. So we're actually on a path that at the moment seems promising to kind of bottom out and actually start to see enrollment growth if we can maintain what we've been able to do in terms of bringing in new students to Albuquerque. The challenge then is to not lose them as they progress through their degrees. Excuse me. Excuse me. A table on the right-hand side, I just wanted to flag where things are going at the branch campuses. As you may remember, branch campuses, community colleges saw huge decreases in enrollment during COVID. For our branches, that's on top of what's been a several year decline. And so there's some significant concerns here. What's encouraging is that we've seen some upticks in most of the branches, Los Alamos, Taos, and Valencia. We've seen upticks in the numbers of, so these 24% at Los Alamos, 12% at Taos. Small but positive at Valencia, increases in numbers of students compared to last spring. So that's a positive thing. Certainly still a concern at Gallup, where we see a 22% decrease compared to last spring. Over the last 5 years, Taos is down about 25 to 30%, well, 25% in head count and about 30% in full-time equivalent students. So there's a lot of concern about that trend at Gallup. And we need to work to try and turn that around as well. So that's the major things I wanted to say about sort of resources from the state, our own internal thinking, one of our key drivers around resources, which is enrollment. And I think I might be, oh no, I'm not done, the important thing. So one last thing then I want to talk about, and this is what President Stokes would have talked about if she could have been here. And that's the UNM 2040 strategic planning process. And so hopefully folks have seen some of the messages about this. The president has flagged it in her weekly perspective a couple of times. If you go to the website listed here, opportunity.unm.edu, that's the 2040 planning website. I'm going to share a few pieces of what's called the vision framework, which is it's a PDF document found under the resources section. What we're really trying to do at this point is, we did an online survey last fall in December. We got over 1,600 faculty, staff, and students provided a terrific body of feedback on what we had put out at that time. So thank you for that. We do still want folks to engage, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the mechanisms for that in just a second. But the vision that's been put together is, as you see it here, be a national and global leader in realizing human potential, addressing critical community challenges, and demonstrating the power of inclusive diversity. That really is that long-term vision for 2040. The proposed recrafted mission statement for the University. The University of New Mexico serves as the state's premier institution of higher learning and provider of healthcare by promoting discovery, generating intellectual and cultural contributions, honoring academic values, and serving our community by building an educated, healthy, and economically vigorous New Mexico. Also in the, that's come out of the planning process and all the input mechanisms are a set of values. And in the vision document you can find on the website, these are discussed in more detail, but excellence, inclusion, environment, integrity, and place. And values can be useful in this kind of a process because values-based decision-making helps you know what to do when you have imperfect information or incomplete information. So hopefully these resonate with folks. And then the last piece, which is actually the biggest piece, doesn't look so big here, but there have been 5 goals written. And each of these goals actually comes with a sort of a long sentence or 2 description of what it's about. I didn't want to put that on PowerPoints. But the first of these is Advance New Mexico. This is about using UNM's intellectual capital to seek out the needs and unique opportunities of our distinctive New Mexican cultures and peoples, economic enterprises and communities, addressing critical issues, addressing opportunities facing humanity, contributing to quality of life, growth, prosperity, and advancement of human societies. The second goal, student experience and educational innovation, states that UNM should support creative, intellectually challenging, exciting, diverse, and joyful learning environments inside and outside the classroom, ensure success of all learners, support lifelong learning and engagement, and through education, contribute to the growth of human societies in New Mexico and across the globe. And then number 3, inclusive excellence. It's really about utilizing equity and an inclusion lens to expand opportunity, cultivating potential of students, faculty, and staff, creating new knowledge, providing service, and leveraging our assets as a highly research-intensive university and health system. Number 4 is sustainability, and this is sustainability in all of its aspects. So ensure the necessary resources, human, financial, and physical, are available to achieve our aspirations while protecting the natural environment. And then finally, goal 5, which is one university. And this is really that in order to achieve the other goals, we'll connect and integrate our academic, research, patient care, and service components, really to operate not as a main campus, an HSC campus, 4 branches, and Sandoval Regional Medical Center, but really to be integrated and one. Under each of these goals, there are objectives that you can see in the vision framework that's on the website. So you can look at that for kind of a little more detail. But again, the key thing is that we're really looking for input. And so we encourage people to go to opportunityunm.edu. There's a ways to participate link. And the top item there is a paragraph about Idea Scale, which is really a crowdsourcing idea platform that we have put the goals into, as well as some additional items to let people provide feedback and ideas. And so we really encourage you to engage in that and give us your thoughts. Okay, I've gone a little bit long, sorry, Finney, but I'll stop there and see if there are questions.
Thank you for that.
It wasn't me.
Are you able to hear me?
An odd sound, Vinny.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can't hear me, but thank you for that, Provost Holloway. Do we have any questions for the Provost?
I see Chris Elder has her hand up.
Hi, Provost Holloway. Thank you for being here. I have a quick comment and a quick question. First, my comment is just, it's my understanding that the Graduate Student Union hasn't chosen to hold an election to unionize because the laws have changed and the card counts they have are evidence enough that they have the support they need. I don't know if you have a different understanding of that, but.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
So then they're required to hold an election. They can choose to or not.
Okay. As the New Mexico Labor Board has identified graduate student instructors specifically as employees, how quickly after the court has addressed UNM administration's appeals to their satisfaction, will UNM admin be sitting down to bargain with the grad students?
Well, I think, so of course, the question assumes a certain outcome. And so I can't assume a particular outcome of those rulings. I think once we see the final ruling of the Labor Board, that will provide hopefully a lot of clarity about where we're going and what the next steps are. But until the Labor Board does issue a ruling, we don't really have anything on which to react or to understand. You know, the confusions that I've mentioned have been brought to the Labor Board and so far not addressed. My hope is that they would address them in their final ruling. And then things will be much clearer and we can be expeditious.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Provost Holloway? Thank you for that, Kristen. I see a hand raised by, is that Sue Rahman?
Yeah, a quick question to Provost Holloway about the graduate student issue. Again, I'm wondering, this might be a little bit premature, this question, but in case you have some opinion, now I'm from engineering. So in engineering, I mean, we have a lot of international students and also externally funded research. So in that case, do the international students who are funded through external funding, are they considered as regular employees, do you think? And I'm a little bit concerned because those students are employees as long as we have the funding. But if the contract ends, the funding goes away.
Sure. So let me address that by a couple analogies. Of course, there are any number of universities that have unionized research assistants, which I think are the group you're particularly concerned with. In those cases, the employees who are represented by the union, their citizenship is immaterial. They're represented by the union independent citizenship. And typically the contracts that are entered into between the institution and the unionized employees address that issue of what happens when grants end. And for a different analogy, we have similar issues and have appropriate language in the contracts with UAUNM, because UAUNM, remember, also represents research faculty who are largely in the same position with respect to being funded through soft funds on research grants. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Provost Holloway, for the updates. And good luck to you and President Stokes in the legislative session.
Thank you, Finney.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the President's report for me. I have just 2 or 3 things. We're going to have a COVID update later in our meeting today. We're going to be joined by Dr. David Pitcher, who's going to talk about, give us a COVID update on the numbers. I think it's going to be a more in-depth analysis than what we've had. So I want to make a comment about COVID, and it goes back to our function as faculty senators, providing guidance back to our departments, back to our colleges, our academic units. And I think it's imperative that we do that, that we report back on what we hear from Dr. Pitcher, share that information with our colleagues. But I also want to share a concern that I have, and it's about our preparation and readiness in case we have a larger outbreak on our campus in terms of faculty contracting COVID. It's been something of a mantra for me since November. I'm concerned because like some other faculty members, I contracted COVID just on the eve of starting the semester. So instead of being able to go face-to-face during the first week of class, we wound up being online. I took the precaution of building in and building my course in a way that I could switch quickly to online if I needed to. I think we need to encourage our colleagues, our department chairs and the like, to make sure that our fellow colleagues are likewise ready and have thought through what it's going to mean if we have to go online as an individual. I also want to point out that if for some reason our faculty members contract COVID, the expectation is that instruction is not going to stop, that we are hopefully going to have people who are not going to fall so ill that they need hospitalization or the like. But we do need to have conversations in our departments at the department level about what it is that we want to be doing. I know we've had these ongoing conversations, but I think that we need and owe to our colleagues conversations about what it is that we're going to do in case we do have these outbreaks. Of course, no one wants one of those. I think we all are operating under the assumption that we're in the middle of this wave and that we're going to get through it safely. All of us hope and pray for that. But even with that said, I think we need a greater response at the departmental level about how we're going to deal with absenteeism if we get to that. The second point that I wanted to talk about is about election and faculty governance. We have our, the university secretary will send out soon information about our faculty governance elections. As much as I would love to, I'm sorry. Nadia raised your hand. I didn't see that. Nadia Falk?
Hi, yeah, this is Nadia Falk. I'm a pathologist at the Health Science Center. And this is going back to your last point. I just had a quick question. So we've been told at the Health Science Center, as far as teaching medical students, that we are not allowed to ask for like individual classes to go from in-person to virtual. Our only option would be to cancel the class, which I agree with you. We should have the online option. So I didn't know if that's kind of universal in other areas and why that is, if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Well, fortunately, we have the provost here who would be able to give us a direct answer to that.
Yeah, Nadia, thank you for the question. So the guidance that we've put out is first, if you're sick, stay home. And by the way, if you're sick with anything, stay home. This is, if we learn anything from the last 2 years, it's that. So if a faculty member is ill, they really should stay home. We put out some guidance that said, I'd like to be careful with this guidance because I don't want it to be a mixed signal. If you're home and you feel okay, you feel capable of teaching, we put out guidance saying that it's okay to teach a class online. We said that shouldn't go on for more than a couple of weeks. In most cases, it probably wouldn't need to go on because for folks with COVID, at least, most cases are resolving quickly, not all, but most. And if it is going on, if you are sick for longer than 2 weeks, you really should be focusing on your health, and your department chair should be working with you to find substitutes and manage that teaching. So I was not aware of such a black and white statement in the medical school. Obviously, if it's a clinical class, that has some pretty significant impacts on how it can be delivered, since the clinical experiences really are done in person. I can make an inquiry on whether the message was meant to be that black and white within the medical school or not, and I'll do so.
Amy Levi is on the.
I'd be happy to
Oh,
speak.
Amy can answer.
I
didn't know Amy
totally
was
can
here.
answer. I spoke with Dr. Villdonis about this very issue today. I'm sorry, Nadia, that was the information that you received, because that was not the intent of the communication. Dr. Vigil and Dr. Richards from the Dean's office in the School of Medicine have been working very diligently with all the programs in the School of Medicine to clarify who can be online and under what circumstances. So if you want to go back to the person who gave you that information, I'd be happy to go through the process. We have a process on the HSE side for pivoting classes to online based on some of the considerations that Dr. Holloway just spoke to. But I'm sorry that what you understood was that under no circumstances could you hold a class online that was not expected to be online. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm Amy Levi at Salud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Subbu?
I'm at the Anderson School of Management. What if a student in a class tests positive? What should our response be to the fellow students in the classroom? Should we inform the fellow students if some student informs the faculty member that they have tested positive?
So if a student tests positive, first we have asked faculty to just shoot a note to the COVID coordinator. And that can be as simple as COVID coordinator at unm.edu. But let the COVID coordinator know that there was a student who tested positive. The student, of course, is sick. They should be at home. And the COVID coordinator is responsible for following up with that student to assess what additional action might be necessary. You shouldn't take it upon yourself to inform other students of the health circumstances of that particular student, but rather let the COVID coordinator, and there's a rapid response team that looks at these cases, and so they make the assessment around exposure. Most important thing to remember is that we are a highly vaccinated population, much more highly vaccinated than the state, also a highly boosted population. About 70% of faculty and staff are boosted. About close to 30% of students now are boosted, and another 10% eligible to be boosted. Those who are boosted are well protected against transmission, and the definition of exposure takes that into account. As always, there's no force shield here. Nothing is perfect. But that's another consideration as well. So in any event, the number one thing we ask faculty to do is inform the COVID coordinator at unm.edu, so that they can follow up and bring the rapid response team into play.
So in the past, I have contacted the COVID coordinator, and I have sent messages to the COVID coordinator stating that a couple of students at different points in time have tested positive, to which I have never received any response back from the COVID coordinator regarding what kind of steps they have taken. So, and the setup of the classroom in the previous semester was they all sat together in one big table, like 8 or 7 students in a round table. And, I understand that the COVID coordinator and the team is doing, or probably will do, the right thing when we inform them. But it would be nice to hear from the COVID coordinator regarding what steps they have, or what's their assessment of the incident that we have reported.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Subbu. Anyone else? Thanks, everyone, for those questions. The next thing that I wanted to talk about very quickly is the Faculty Senate election for President of Faculty Senate. I am term limited out, would love to stick around, but I will be won't be stepping down. I will not be on the docket for Faculty Senate President this coming year. Please think about serving in this capacity. This has been a very rewarding service obligation for me. It is time consuming. I'm happy to share it with anyone who's interested, what the ins and outs, nuts and bolts of it are. but hopefully we'll have a broad slate of candidates, not just for that, but also for our operations committee, and hopefully for the other elected positions that might be open coming this coming spring. The third point that I wanted to make was about a caucus system and to ask for volunteers. If I had 2 or 3 people who are interested in meeting with me, working with me to think through whether or not we even need the idea of a caucus system, it makes some sense that if we have an issue that is specific to our health science center, that I would be able to communicate, faculty governance would be able to communicate with a cohort of people there and not bother folk in engineering with things that are not material to them. It allows us a little bit more mobility and flexibility in our communications. And also, I think it offers opportunities for us as faculty senators to come together to discuss issues in ways that this forum that isn't conducive to. So if I have a couple of people, if you'll reach me offline, if you're interested in helping me to think through and come up with a strategy for that, I'd appreciate it. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is CO7. And I want to be clear that I'm not, I don't want to stir the pot, but we attempted to have CO7 addressed in our last SSTAR meeting. That policy was not addressed. In fact, it was not taken up for business. I don't think technically that it has actually been tabled by Robert's rules. I'll have to check into that. What we've done in the interim is to reach out to University Council, and the provost presented to me today a list or a two-page list of concerns that we will take back to the policy committee to address and to address before we try to get back on the SSTAR agenda. What chafes me, of course, is the process. We have a very clear-cut process for how these kinds of changes are supposed to come forward. We came to that meeting and people who I thought probably should be prepared were not. And we wound up having to push this back to at least another 2 months, which I really am just chafed about. I assure you, and we need to let folk who may be concerned about CO7 know that we will continue to push on this and make sure that we get this back to the regions as soon as possible. The current CO7 policy is simply unserviceable. This one is a much better policy, much better benefit for our faculty. We'll continue with that. But I wanted to note that, one, my disdain for what happened with this policy, and a commitment to making sure that we get it pushed through. So with those 4 things, I'll end the president's report. And our next item on the agenda, unless there are questions for me about the president's report. Hearing none, colleagues, we'll move on to our next agenda item. We have our consent agenda with Form C from the Curricula Committee, and Dr. Clifton will help us through the rest of the agenda. Cash, are you there?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we have here on the consent agenda the Form C from the Curriculum Committee. Does anybody have questions about this or anything? Okay, and then I believe this is a matter we need to. Is this a matter we need to vote on? Rick or Nancy, if you could help me out.
Yes.
Okay.
Rick beat me to the unmute.
Okay. So if having no questions, thank you. It's popped up there. Colleagues, if you could please vote for us. And then Rick, if you'll let me know when you have a count, please.
Okay, it was approved with 37 votes for and 4 abstentions.
Fantastic, thank you. So the Form C are approved. So moving forward in our agenda, we have Form D, new graduate certificate, technical and professional communication. Julianne, are you on the call with us?
I am. Hi.
Hi, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I must admit, I've never done this before in front of the Faculty Senate. So I don't know if you want me to begin with an overview of the Form D, or I have some slides I'm happy to share. Cash, if you want to give me a tip on how this is usually done with Form Ds, I'll follow that.
It would be very helpful to me if to have an overview with along with your slides, I think, if that would be okay.
Sure. Okay. Let me share that. Okay, can everyone see this slide?
Yes, we
Just give
can.
me a thumbs up. Okay, this is actually prepared for another body, but I think it serves this body as well. So this is the overview for our new graduate certificate in technical and professional communication out of the rhetoric and writing program in the English department. So this program was designed to be a 15 credit certificate, which presumably will be marketed not only to our existing master's and PhD students in English, but to other students in other disciplines. We've received letters of support from an engineering department and from a communications program in support of this. So it was, let's see, Miko Oishi wrote one letter in favor and David Weiss wrote another letter in favor, indicating that there are courses that comprise this certificate that other graduate students might want to take on an individual basis, even if they don't want to take the entire 15 credit certificate. So the reason for the emergence of this certificate is that we are hoping to provide graduate students at UNM with a micro-credential that will help them increase their post-graduation employment options. We did an informal survey of our own graduate students, and it was a short survey, and 44% of them indicated that they would like to add this to their existing master's or PhD degree program. So there's already some indication that we will have enrollment in this. This program will focus, as it says on the slide, on writing, communication, and information design. But what makes our program unique from others in our region is our focus on social justice concerns and moving some of the established scenarios in technical and professional communication into a state when where they're better able to serve the people who need technical communication and professional writing services in our state with these social justice informed outputs. And I will just say sort of anecdotally, those of us who are coordinators of the technical and professional communication program, I'm currently in that role in our English department. We regularly receive queries from people working in industry, people working in engineering, people working at the labs who want to pick up a certificate, but all we have currently is the undergraduate certificate. So we are answering an existing need in the community via this new program. So we are able to effectively teach this program. We have many faculty who focus in technical and professional communication. And we have 3 new courses that are part of this program. And those have been designed by my colleagues in the English department and myself. And we are not asking for a budget at this time because we are able to staff this with existing rhetoric and writing faculty. Let's see. And because we want to fulfill the goals articulated in UNM's mission, we definitely want to serve our local community, our state community, and our regional community here. And because of the expansion of the remote workplace and things like remote usability testing and things like that, that are sort of part and parcel of the technical and professional communication landscape, we will be able to serve and participate with global partners as well. So we also will have an industry advisory team. So we will necessarily be collaborating and having the guidance of industry professionals, both from the nonprofit sector and from Sandia National Laboratories, as well as other local minority-owned engineering firms. So we are definitely hoping to serve the mission of our university through this program. I have a bullet point here on the slide that talks about the increasing demand for people trained in technical and professional communication. So we're also hoping to serve that need. As you probably are aware, sometimes PhD students in the humanities, once they graduate, need some alt-ac credentials as well, because jobs in academia might not be as forthcoming as they wish they were. So this provides graduate students with an additional line on their CV that they have this credential. And so that's kind of my quick overview, and let me stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you, Julianne. That was a well done presentation. I really appreciate that. I'm not seeing anybody with questions. I would entertain a motion to take a vote on this.
Christine DeLucas, I'd vote to accept.
So I'm hearing that we have a motion for a vote. Do I have a second?
Ann Gibson, second.
Thank you. Rick, can we please pop the poll up? Rick, if you could please let us know when we have results.
I think he's muted.
Oh.
But it looks like
45 for and 2 abstentions.
Okay, so it looks like this does indeed pass. All right, Julianne, thank you so much. Moving on. Yes. Take care. Moving on in our agenda, we have policy, faculty handbook, policy D175 and D176. Do we have Karen and Lee on the call?
I'm here. I'm not sure if Lee was able to come. He's in pulmonary today. So as you can imagine, he's very busy.
It sounds like it, certainly. So I will turn it over to you, Karen.
Okay. So I think everybody was able to see the policies that were sent around. The main things that I wanted to discuss today was just to go over some of the changes that have been made in D175 and D176. I believe there was a memo sent around about it, but if you have any questions, obviously feel free to let me know. I'm trying to have everybody up, but I'm not sure if I'm getting everybody. So D175 and D176 have to do with student conduct and grievance policies. There were some changes that were both required and requested by the Dean of Students and at the Health Science Center as well. And so there were some changes that were made. Basically, these changes have to do with eliminating an extra level of appeal at the Health Science Center that seemed to be incommensurate and unfair to those students. At the same time, there were some changes made to try and address conflict of interest that might come up by students having to repeatedly interact with faculty, staff, superiors, whatever, that may be involved in the grievance. And so some changes have been made to reflect those, as well as changes to reflect the changes in titles for OEO now is CEEO, I think. And so some of that is just changing titles as well. So those are the basics of what has been done. But if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Karen. I'm not seeing or hearing any question. So it looks like we would need to take separate votes on D175 and D176. So I would entertain a motion to call a vote on D175.
And move that we take a vote on D175.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So Rick, if you could pop that poll up for us, please. And then please let us know when you have a count.
$35 for, 11 abstentions.
Okay, and that is
So that's approved.
approved. Okay, fantastic. So D175 is approved. And so here again, I would entertain a motion to take a vote on D176.
Moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So Rick, if you could please pop D176 up for us.
Okay, 36 for, 10 abstentions.
Okay, and again, that would be approved, correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. So D176 is approved. Thank you, colleagues. Moving forward in the agenda, next we have an information item regarding Banner 9 faculty self-service grade entry. It says Sheila Jernak. Is Sheila on the call?
I am on the call.
Oh, there you are. I didn't see you. Hi, Sheila. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Nader Khalil, our colleague in IT, and I are here to bring you news of upcoming change. And the change involves the faculty grading system that you have been using. We have an upgrade coming. It is faculty Banner 9 faculty self-service grade entry. And Nader, if I can turn it over to you, we have a very brief presentation.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you guys hear me? If I may take control and share my screen, that would be fantastic. Yes, I can. And please let me know when you see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. How about now? Can you still see it?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right. As Sheila introduced me, my name is Nader Khalil. I manage the application that you see right now. I've been bugging Sheila and other folks actually to be on the agenda to bring you some information about what's going on behind the scene, since this implementation will impact all faculty that they enter grades at the end of each semester. The name of the application is Faculty Self-Service, which product of Banner. Banner is our ERP system that we use, and the vendor is Lucian. I believe everyone is aware of that. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I want to just give you some background on the application itself. It's a brand new implementation that we never had it before. For some of you actually used to work with Banner. That was the old system. It's called Banner 8, and we start migrating some self-service applications to Banner 9. Faculty grade entry, it's one of the tools that it comes with it, but we have been having this on the Banner 9 roadmap for a long time. This got pushed to the side a few times because of priorities, COVID, and other competing priorities. So Banner 9 faculty self-service application is going to be a new implementation that it will replace what you guys currently do when you enter grades, right? But it's just more than entering grades. There are other functionalities that it comes with it, some of which it will be within the scope. You have final grade entry, mass grade upload, incomplete grades, and last but not least, the student's academic review. I believe some of you are used to the standalone application that you work with right now to upload the mass grades. It's an old technology application that we inherited a long time ago. And the new features that it comes with Banner 9, it will give you more intuitive, user-friendly interface that you can be working with in the future moving forward. And as you can see, all Banner 9 applications, it's user-friendly, very intuitive, and it can adjust with each browsers and such. What the team did so far, as we follow our standards, we established the project team members, and I will give you an idea of who are the project team. We collected samples from the functional offices and some faculty and administrators as well. You will see exactly the structure of the project in a little bit, but that's something that we follow in every implementation that we lead. We have a scope that was approved by the committee, and that included the features that I just mentioned in the previous slideshow. Usually when we get in any implementation, we document current and future states to understand what's going on and what the folks would like to see in the new version of the application, and we did all of that. We set some faculty members with some test accounts in our test environment, so we can allow them to test the application and play with it and provide us with some feedback, because you guys know exactly what you need to do using the new service. We are only helping implementing the new application. The folks that we have been working with, they are fantastic. They've been giving us a tremendous amount of feedback and such, so we'll be able to fix any issues and start developing the training materials and videos as well, that it will help everyone else. As you can see, you will be able to access it through Lobo Web. And what we did as well, we did like a fit gap analysis of what you see right now and what you will see in the future. And we also request to have our security team to do a security assessment on the application as well, to make sure that it's secure. The students cannot hack it and update their grades and so forth, so on. So that's all what we did so far. Any questions so far? All right, I will keep moving forward. Here is what's going on when it comes to the structure of the team, right? As you can see, we have samples of faculty members that helping us from main campus and some branches as well. And we have functional offices from main campus and branches. We have HSC. HSC will be using the application as well. We have law school representations and also academic technologies folks that they are on the project team with us. As you guys know that I would say most of you actually using the LM system that we have right now, and the new one, the Canvas, that we'll be having in the future. And we want to make sure that we don't have a duplicates of features. It's either you use it in the new Canvas system or use it in the Banner 9 faculty self-service. So by working with them, we're trying to align on what they can offer in their systems and what we can offer as well in this application. All right, any questions on this slide? All right. I will move into the upcoming stuff that we're working on, which basically conducting some testing in our test environment, start generating some training materials and videos and such. It will be available for everyone, build on the communication that will be disseminating very soon. We have a communication plan in place that was approved by some folks. Still, we make changes to it to adjust and make sure that we include folks from different offices, different departments, and so forth, so on. So we'll be disseminating some information in the future, and also we'll be updating the documentations when it comes to the project itself. Where we are right now, as you can see, we're about 25% done with the project. We started late last year, and we're planning to go live with it and have it available for the summer grading. So the official go live is going to be 6/24, and the closeout of the project is going to be in August, the first week of August. The status of the overall health of the project, it's in a good shape. and we don't have any issues or any showstoppers so far. And that's all what I have for you. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I would just add that it has a very clean look to it, and the theory is that it will be far more friendly for mobile users. So we're excited about that. We have a great team, including folks from the branches and several different representatives from faculty doing our testing with us. And we just wanted to give you a heads up today to let you know that it's coming, that we're excited, and we hope you'll be excited to have a new product out there too for entering grades.
Thank you. Ian, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, thanks so much, Cash. So Sheila and Nader, thank you very much for your presentation. Really quick question. What can we expect to see that, when we go into the grade entry, how is it going to look different than what we're using now?
That's a good question. Maybe because we have limited time, I would love to present it and demo that to you. But I mean, when you go to Lobo Web, you will click on the same link that you click on it right now, and it will come up with a roster where you can manually update grades, right, from a very intuitive interface, or maybe do a mass upload, right? All in the same place, right? It will give you a nice way of validating the stuff that you enter in case if you miss a date, for example, a lost attended date for a grade of D or F, it will give you an error message at the top of that page, right? So, and all of that will be included in some training materials and some short videos, like a 1.5 to 2 minutes video for each one of the features that we would bring to you. So you can take a look at it, spend 10 minutes and you are up to go.
Okay.
And even if you don't watch the videos, you should be able to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Very good questions. Any other questions? And I do have a question for you all. Do you think I should come back maybe near go live with the application and give you a last look and maybe a demo of what we are about to reveal? Or what do you guys suggest? How do you like me and my team to update you?
I think that would be great to have an update closer to the launch date.
Okay, fantastic.
Looks like
awesome.
Agrees.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments?
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to see this new system, and I am particularly jazzed about hearing about things that are more mobile friendly, since that seems to be where things are going technologically in a lot of ways. So thank you both for your time. Colleagues, next on our agenda is another information item, and this is with Dr. David Pitcher. And it looks like you're on the line with us.
Indeed, I am. And thank you all for having me here. I've been asked to give you another update on what's happening with COVID, and particularly as it impacts all of us in New Mexico, but also here at UNM. So I'll go to share screen here. Okay, are you all able to see the PowerPoint presentation? Excellent. So I'll just go ahead and dive right in. I think the last time I talked to this group was in late October, and we've had a lot of water under the bridge since then. We've had Omicron essentially become the dominant variant within the state. In October, it was Delta. Omicron is a new variant of concern that originated in South Africa and has a fairly unique genome that makes it highly transmissible, though by all appearances is less severe in terms of serious morbidity and requirements for ventilators and seems to have less mortality associated with it. But the key to the Omicron is that it's highly transmissible. So if you look at this first slide and you look at the number of new cases being identified in New Mexico, beginning in very early January, we really saw just this tremendous spike in new daily cases, where we were at the peak of the big surge last winter. We peaked around 3,000 cases per day. With this particular Omicron surge, we've been seeing double that number on a daily basis for the last couple of weeks. This slide is only really accurate up to about mid-January. And this was the last modeling site update that we had. But if we were to add in recent data up through today, you'd see that we've been at a peak around 6,000 new cases a day for the last week or so. So COVID has really hit us hard in the last 4 weeks. If you look at this slide, you can see that epidemic growth or acceleration in growth. It's just sort of been phenomenal how quickly this virus has run through New Mexico. The good news, though, is that even though we're seeing this huge spikes in cases, we are not seeing a concomitant increase in the hospitalizations nearly to the same degree that we did with previous surges associated with the Alpha variant back in the first winter surge and then the Delta variant. So far, there's been this uncoupling between numbers of cases and serious illness requiring hospitalization, and that's really good news. If we were seeing the same rate of hospitalization with Omicron that we were seeing with Delta or with the Alpha variant, we would be well in excess of 1,000 hospitalizations or more, which is not a sustainable position for the healthcare delivery system here in New Mexico or at UNM. The number of deaths has not really increased substantially since the Delta surge that we saw this fall. And if anything, the deaths are holding relatively stable in the 20 new deaths per day range. That's still a high number, but it's nowhere near what we were seeing, for example, during the first winter surge last year, where we had daily death rates that peaked around 70 to 80 deaths per day. This is just another example of how the Omicron variant is impacting our healthcare delivery systems. This chart basically shows the number of people showing up or the percentage of emergency department visits that are for influenza or coronavirus-like illnesses. And you can see that those numbers have just increased very dramatically, really with the beginning of Delta and now with Omicron added on top of that. We're seeing the same numbers of patients in our EDs, basically overwhelming our emergency departments as we saw back in the first winter surge over a year ago. One of the things that we're seeing with Omicron is we're seeing an increased number of what are called breakthrough infections. And those are infections that occur in people who have otherwise done all the things they're supposed to do, receiving vaccinations and boosters. Omicron still finds its way into those folks, including our healthcare workers. And you can see that now up to 43% of cases are being seen in vaccinated individuals. The good news, though, is that the vaccines still provide quite a bit of protection against the need for hospitalization with serious illness, and a lot of protection against death from the COVID virus. So the take-home message here is that no vaccine is perfect, but there is still significant protection offered to those who are vaccinated. Excuse me. You all have probably heard about the new masking requirements here at UNM. And this slide is just a demonstration of where that recommendation comes from. Previously, cloth masks were thought to be reasonably useful and effective with the Delta and Alpha variants that we faced before. But we know now that with Omicron, it is highly transmissible, and that the effectiveness of cloth masks is not what we need it to be for a congregate population like we have with on-campus students and within our healthcare settings. And that's why the strong recommendation is to get the best mask you can, because it will afford you the longest period of protection against transmission from an infected individual. Now, it's not practical outside of a healthcare setting for people to wear true N95 masks, just because for those to work properly, you have to be fitted for those masks. And that's not going to be practical for a large population outside of a healthcare setting. So the recommendation, the strongest recommendation for faculty and students and members of the community is to try and identify an approved KN95 mask, which provides additional protection above and beyond a surgical mask, but doesn't require fit testing. Now, one of the important things is everyone's going to be looking for these KN95 masks, and you need to look for one that is NIOSH approved. There are a lot of counterfeits out there. So when you're looking at these masks, try to identify whether they have the NIOSH approval as part of their markings. So here at UNM, within our health system, healthcare delivery system at UNM Hospital and Sandoval Regional Medical Center, we're still running an exceptionally high occupancy. UNM Hospital's at 140% occupancy today. We've been running consistent record census numbers. SRMC has been running at or over 100% occupancy now for several months. And even as our COVID census is going up and hospitalizations for COVID-related illness are going up, we're also still seeing that surge in care related to delayed care and people having put off the kind of medical care that they need for non-COVID related illnesses. So the pressure on our healthcare delivery system is sort of a double whammy. We'd be busy, exceptionally busy, even without COVID, but with COVID layered on top of it, it's really straining us to our limits. And in fact, at UNM and Sandoval Regional Medical Center, we have implemented what are called crisis standards of care since November, which really puts everyone on notice that we are having to make healthcare rationing decisions because we just don't have the resources to manage all the patients that are being sent our way or show up at our doors. The way that's really playing out right now is that there are many outside transfers that would normally come to us for our tertiary and quaternary care that we deliver they're having to go out of state or be sent elsewhere because we just don't have the capacity or capability to care for those patients. Right now, our COVID census represents just a little over 20% of our overall census. But it's still a significant burden given the non-COVID related illness that we're dealing with. Right now, within our overall health system, we have an average daily census of about 140 COVID positive patients. And that's out of just a little bit under 670 beds available. Rural hospitals are still really struggling to keep up and keep staff and maintain any kind of critical services. And what that has ended up doing is increasing the pressure on hospital delivery systems within the major metro areas. So everybody's busy and everybody is struggling here in New Mexico. We've also seen a significant increase in our dependency and utilization on traveling staff and locum tenens providers to help provide care. And this is a huge, significant financial drain on the institution. There are just not enough federal monies to offset the cost that it takes to bring in these staff who are garnering a premium for their services right now. So just as a matter of scale, we're spending about $10 million a month out of the UNM hospital's budget just to bring these kind of staff in. And that's not sustainable over the long run. UNM Hospital has a very small margin that they deal with as a public institution. And having that kind of hit to our budget is, again, not sustainable in the long run. So we're going to see and have to deal with some significant financial recovery as we come out of COVID at some point. We are actually very blessed to have a Department of Defense team here with us now, a team of physicians and support staff that are helping us out at UNM Hospital. And FEMA will actually be sending teams to both UNM, UNMH, and SRMC in the very near future to assist with our staffing needs. Every little bit of help counts, and we're looking forward to them helping us out. And as I mentioned, we're not really fulfilling our complete mission because we've essentially closed our doors to outside transfers that would normally depend upon us for high-level care. And we're also back in a position of canceling non-urgent surgical procedures or other care that could be delayed without significant harm to patients. And that's being done just to make room for COVID and other patients who have no other options or have very urgent or emergent needs. We're also redeploying staff from some of our outpatient settings or clinic settings. And as a result, with those staff being used in the inpatient care arenas, we're having to reduce access to some of our clinics. And that's not good service, that's not good health care, but it's a short-term strategy just to try and manage all the patients that we've got. And as I mentioned last time, we're still really struggling with significant burnout and wellness concerns among all of our frontline healthcare workers who have just, taken a beating over the last 2 years. God bless each and every one of them. They're hanging in there and they're doing the very best they can. But at some point, there's going to be sort of a second wave of pandemic related concerns just among healthcare staff. And so we are making appropriate plans and preparation to deal with what we see as another wave of wellness concerns that are going to hit even after COVID fades a little bit. So that's the end of the presentation that I've got, and I'm happy to entertain questions.
Thank you so much. I'm seeing lots of great conversations and ideas in the chat. Ian, I saw your hand.
Yeah, thanks, Cash. Dr. Pitcher, I've got a couple questions, and then I've got a third question that I'm going to throw out that I think is probably better addressed to the provost. But I'll throw it out there in case my colleagues have some ideas or suggestions. But Dr. Pitcher, the first question I've got is concerning the death rate. And I'm wondering if those are still particularly related to pre-existing conditions as they were in the past. And the second question really quickly is, I hear a lot of reports and discussion about the coronavirus eventually becoming endemic as opposed to pandemic. I wonder if you could address that a little bit.
Sure. In terms of the mortality, yes, most of the deaths that we're seeing are still in higher risk categories. People over 65 with comorbid conditions, unvaccinated, immunocompromised. So we're not seeing deaths in people that would not normally be considered at high risk. I won't say there aren't any, but that's not, that trend hasn't really shifted at all with the Omicron variant. The other thing that we're seeing is less severe illness. So the percentage of patients requiring ventilator support has actually gone down. It was running around 25%, and at least within our own system, the number requiring ICU level care and ventilator support is probably down below 20%, maybe in the 15% range. So that's good news. And then the idea of COVID eventually becoming endemic, I'm just a simple surgeon, and I can't really comment on that definition too well, except that my understanding is that at some point, the level of illness or the prevalence of illness within the community and the needed response to that level of illness will reach a point where it will be more similar to what we have to deal with seasonal flu. We're not there yet. I think people are hopeful we'll get there soon. But someday we'll get to that point. I just don't know when that's going to be.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Pitcher. I appreciate your candor. Sometimes wish that journalists would take the same approach and not sort of jump in as though they were experts with everything, but that's the world we live in right now.
Yeah.
Should I go ahead with my last question that sort of may be related to Dr. Pitcher, but also could be of use, I think, for the whole group, or should I let Chris go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Ian, and then we can move to Chris.
Sure. Well, the question I've got, and it's a dilemma because the university wants us back in classrooms. I think that's great. I appreciate it. I tried lecturing today in a KN95. That is next to impossible. Nobody could hear me. It's hot. I mean, I felt lightheaded because of the lack of oxygen. It just doesn't seem like something that is really doable from a practical standpoint. So I'm just wondering if anyone else has any solutions or suggestions about this kind of problem. And that's how I silence a room.
I have a less than ideal solution. There was one class in the fall in particular that I couldn't project my voice loud enough to be heard in. And so I ended up just bringing in my Logitech headphones and plugging in and using the speakers in the classroom. Not ideal, but it worked.
Okay, cool. I'll try that. Thank you, Cash. And I'll check and see if there are bullhorn. I like that, Chris. Thanks. I will read through the comments in a moment. Chris, thanks so much.
Thank you. And so Chris, please.
Dr. Pitcher, thank you so much for being here. And, you know, I appreciate so much what you and your colleagues are doing at UNMH and on main campus, North Campus. I was lamenting in the chat that the provost wasn't here to hear your presentation. So I was wondering, is there someone like yourself, maybe even you, who has opportunities to present this information to upper administration at UNM? Because, you know, I'm repeatedly at the bargaining table for our faculty union about COVID-19, and I'm exhausted by constantly having to make the argument that faculty health, student, staff health, and the health of our loved ones in our homes is a matter of concern. So I guess I would like to know who the administration is hearing their COVID information from.
Yeah, and that's actually a very good question. So since the beginning of the pandemic, we've actually had under an emergency operations plan for the university and for the Health Sciences Center, we have stood up what is called an incident management team. And on that team, I'm on that team. Byron Piat is on that team as the emergency manager for the university. Dr. Ziodonis is part of that team. Dr. Richards, we have content expertise at the Health Sciences Center level, but we also include President Stokes and her team as part of those conversations. And so none of the activities that occur on main campus are occurring in a vacuum without discussion with the right content experts and so forth. So I know the provost has been part of those conversations. President Stokes has been part of those conversations. Dr. Stokes has different health policy teams that she's put together to help advise her. And I know these conversations happen weekly. And so if not daily, depending upon the activities with COVID. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. I don't think there's a vacuum of activity for conversation around this. It may just not be conveyed down to the front lines on main campus.
I just basically, I want to know if anyone from the provost's office is part of the conversations, because it's the provost's office that is making the decisions about faculty working conditions.
Yeah, they are definitely involved in that. And in fact, right after our incident management team meeting, I know Dr. Ziodonis participates in Dr. Stokes' leadership roundtable. And there have been a few occasions where some of the other members, like me, have been invited to that meeting with President Stokes, and the provost is part of that meeting.
Again, thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, Chris. Daniel?
Thank you, Cash, and thank you, Dr. Pitcher. In response to the question about how to project one's voice with the various masks, what you may find is the masks that have a larger air volume in front of your mouth that also make a seal do facilitate being able to speak more easily and project better. Wearing an N95 mask, because it seals so well, is not comfortable for long periods of time, but many of us are doing just that for long periods of time for many months now. and that may be helpful. And then the second item, Dr. Pitcher, I put it into the chat. You mentioned that it's not practical to do fit testing for everybody in regarding to wearing N95 masks, and I agree. My thought is, though, that since the government is now saying that they're going to be shipping out N95 masks, and you can even purchase N95 masks online or through Costco, that there will be some people who are trying their best to protect themselves and protect other people. And I was wondering, since we have expertise at the University of New Mexico, could we put together an educational video in terms of how you use the double straps, how you pinch the metal nose piece, so that the people who would like to avail themselves of the N95 masks or the KN95 masks can do the best that they can with a little bit of expert guidance. It might go a long way in terms of public health as well as public perception of the great things we can do at the University of New Mexico.
That's an awesome suggestion, and I will bring that up at our Friday meeting this week. The issue about fit testing is it's a matter, number one, it's a matter of resources, but it's also a matter of federal law. OSHA requires employers to do fit testing for those employees that are required to wear an N95. But if it's if it is a N95 that somebody purchases on their own, no one's going to be policing whether or not somebody's, had appropriate fit testing. And so I think your suggestion about putting out some material that's proactive and gives people an idea how to properly use that, and we'll be fine. And I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Colleagues, do we have any other questions? I just want to say thank you to everybody for your thoughtful questions and comments surrounding all this. I hope everybody's being safe. I never in a million years imagined teaching in an environment like this, and I just want to acknowledge how difficult it is for us as teachers and staff and those at the hospital as well. And so I thank you for all this great discussion regarding this. Do we have any public comment?
No.
Okay, hearing none. Colleagues, we have exhausted our agenda, and so we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Cash. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cash. And Vinny, it looks like you jumped on at the last part. Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. I've got a situation I'm dealing with. Cash, are you still on? Is everybody there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I think
Hey,
we have.
thank you for doing that. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, you bet. Anytime.
Okay.
If you can stop the recording.